Okay, it's Thursday, sometime in February, and good morning. It's morning here at SIC. It's like a ghost town, ghost of February's past, but we are meant to continue on. So, what we were talking about in last class was the general idea of public image. So that is still based on perceptions. Public image is the perceptions that people have about, in this case, your company, but we all know public image exists in social life. It also exists in political life, countries' lives, countries' perceptions of one another. We have different ways that we can help to create that public image. The first one is advertising. Second one is called public relations. We'll highlight the differences today between those things. And also community engagement. That includes sponsorship, which we'll talk about as well. I'm on page, someone asked to be very clear about the page. I'm on page 30 in our textbook today, page 30, strategies to build a positive public image. Companies, I'll review from last class just for a couple minutes. Green gifts was an idea that people had, particularly in retail, of giving some bags away that are reusable and so don't require their customers to use plastic. Of course, the bags will have typically the brand of the company, so that'll work two ways for the company. It shows that they care, and it publicly shows that they care when people carry the bags around. It's a very basic and useful way to build a positive image. Donations, so there's different, a company can give to charity directly, but it's not as powerful as it makes the consumer feel that they're part of the charity. So what that means is the company will take a percentage of the money that they get, profits or just out of the total price of what they sell, and donate that to a good cause or a charity. So you'll see an advertisement that says that, it's probably paid for, the advertisement, but that says that, okay, for every one of these you buy, 5% will go to charity, or we'll give $5 to charity, depending on what kind of product it is. So that's supposed to make the consumer feel good about not only the company, but about buying things from the company. How else can you build a positive public image? Just on a strictly business sense, you do it by having consistent quality service. And usually if you can show good after-sales service for customers who have issues or problems, that's particularly powerful. And finally, not to make mistakes in things come out. So to maintain your public image, you need to do ethical things. If you do unethical things, typically they'll come out in the media in one way or another, and we'll see what kind of damage can get done from unethical behavior. An example of that would be perhaps for example here, it says, I put the Boeing 737 has existed for decades, but if I put 737 into the Google search, it comes up max, max, max every time, because that was the scandal. That was the airplane that was built without proper security checks. So that's why that comes up, right? And even more than that, it says documents. It's about the research of the issues with the plane. And so not only has the production for the plane stopped, the company's reputation is completely destroyed. Boeing is one of the biggest companies in the world, and nobody wants to fly on their planes anymore because they're not trusted. They were unethical in their production of those planes. I think I gave some other examples from Vietnam and China in the last lesson. Okay, so now we get to something called sponsorship. That's one reason why I put this image behind me on the board. Hopefully Vietnam will have its first Formula One very soon, next month. If people don't panic too much about the coronavirus and they cancel it. But you can see here that this is an advertisement. This is placed to be seen by the crowds, whether they're arriving or even on television. And this car is sponsored by Red Bull in particular, but so is the event. This is an event sponsorship. So this sponsorship has to do with the planners of the event. This is the racing team. That's a whole different thing. And besides that, you have all of these other companies that are paying to have their logos and their image of their company. I don't know what this is. This looks like also some form of sponsorship image. So it's very carefully planned out, right? That how you can see the logos and how much space is available to put the logos. We see this on football pitches too. We see it on, on television. We see a lot of advertisements because it's 90 minutes of people running around kicking a soccer ball, and that image of that logo gets into your head. So that's sponsorship. Sponsorship, I would say, would be under community engagement in most cases. Sponsorship takes place in so many public events. I believe if you've driven around Saigon, even or Ho Chi Minh City, at Tet, you see that the decoration of the city has a bunch of company names and logos on it. So even our New Year's is somehow sponsored by some companies who are trying to associate with this Happy New Year feeling. So in our book, page 30, corporate sponsorship is a business relationship where two parties make an economic exchange. It's not a donation. The company's not just giving the money to the event organizer, but rather it's a business arrangement. A business creates a community image. This is community engagement, a community image by building associations that are held in the memory of people in the community. So when you go to a football match, I don't know if you lose a big football match if you associate it with the brand that was advertising, but usually it's subconscious, right? It's supposed to stick in your head as a positive image. Maybe you can remember the Australian Open. If you watch tennis, they have very strong sponsorships of the tennis organization. Rolex comes to mind, Kia Motors, cars come to mind. So when you're looking at your task in Skoda, you should also consider what kind of activities that Skoda did in terms of sponsorship. Did they do any sponsorship to help increase the image of their brand? It's brand image, okay? So, so moving on to the next page, page 31 at the top. What do you gain from sponsorship? It's very sophisticated and it has a lot of benefits. Sponsorship can be a combination of payments, providing support by offering free office space, equipment, food, clothing, or staff. I've seen live music events where someone who has a sound system uses the event to promote how great their sound system is, and they basically let them use the sound system for free, but the idea is that people in the future will say, wow, that's a great sound system, and rent it if they need it. So financial support is typically the most common form of sponsorship. However, there are other ways to contribute. Aquafina could exchange free water for all the runners and maybe even some of the fans of a 10K race to support a racing event, a city racing event. So we also see sponsorship in the form of football uniforms, right? That's very powerful kind of sponsorship where people buy the team uniform for a year or 10 years, and many of us could probably tell you who is the sponsor of the uniforms of Manchester United Football Club, for example. That is, if you remember, a car company from the United States, Chevrolet. Is it Chevrolet? Yeah, I think it's Chevrolet. So you can remember that, and maybe even if you're a fan of that team, you even get a more positive association if they have success in football. Actually, probably one of the most strong ones is the crazy Leicester City. Leicester City was a weird team who somehow won the British Premier League against all the big money teams, and they had these shirts. They ran around in blue, and it said King Power, and it's stuck in your head. Most people in the world would never have heard of that company if that team was not so successful. So some companies gamble. They kind of feel like, okay, well, what if we back one of these teams that's not, one of the well-known teams, but possibly, potentially could break through and end up on television, and then our sponsorship could be very cheap, and we could get global image improvement from that success. So let's look at 4 different ways that technically sponsorship supports your brand image. Visibility, of course. Visibility means that, like in this example, all the participants in the event and spectators will see the logo or the slogan, life is good, somewhere in the corner here. You can see the slogan, life is good, to stick in people's heads. During the event, and visibility will be high if a company sponsors an event that's broadcast on television. So not only live at the event, but if it's a televised event, it's even more powerful. You would probably not even notice how many logos that you see at one of these events. There's tons of them. Positioning. This is perhaps the most important element of a sponsorship. You would not typically have a cigarette company sponsor a 10K run. That would be weird, right? You want something that fits with the event. In 2008, you were very young, but one of the biggest live concerts that ever played in Vietnam was an American band called My Chemical Romance. I think it's kind of shocking today to imagine that they played here. It was 2008, and the main spot, there were 10,000 people there. It was located in the stadium near the airport, and it was sponsored by Tiger Beer, and it was called Tiger Unite 2008. Sometimes I still meet people who saw that show because it was one of the only international rock concerts that was in an international level, and they remember that Tiger Beer was the sponsor 10 years after the event because it was that strong. So the positioning of Tiger for that case was they wanted to be known as cool. current, modern, international, rock and roll, fun. So all of these ideas for the company and the brand were from the concert. They were trying to get their brand associated with that fun, and it's very effective, even 10 years later, if you do it right. So let's look at the definition. Positioning, because of the association between a company and an event, the values and the image of the event can support the image and positioning of the company. So in this case, we're talking about something, well, I'll give the name at the end. Support the image and positioning of the company. If the company wants to be known as some kind of luxury fashion brand, they've got to get on fashion TV, or they want to be a sponsor of a fashion show or a fashion week or something like that. If the company wants to show that they are environmentally friendly, perhaps they will join other companies and have a environmentally, or talk about a green cosmetic conference. So companies that are producing green cosmetics are able to get together and support each other by creating a positive image. The event endorses the company in a similar way to how celebrities are used in endorsements. Those are called endorsements. How a celebrity endorses a company and how it's used in advertising. So, if you have this MTP guy, I've seen him in advertisements for Jollibee. I'm not really sure what values, except for, you know, the cool new guy, new singer, current, you know, if MTP eats Jollibee, then if I eat Jollibee, I'll be like MTP. So that's called endorsement, when you have a celebrity who supports or gets paid to support a brand and is used. Cristiano Ronaldo for Castrol Oil is another one that comes to mind in Vietnam. But this is different. This is sponsorship. So this is, it's similar in the way that the image of the event is supposed to come and increase the image of the company. That's called image transfer. It's an important concept, image transfer. Well, I'll come up with a definition when I can find one, but basically image transfer means the values and the image of the event get transferred to the brand. So again, there is some other side of it where you would think that the event would not want some kind of sponsorship, right? Even though it's money for a 10K run, they don't want to be associated with smoking necessarily. Okay, by supporting an event, the good intentions and community involvement of the event are then associated with the company. That would be another way to describe image transfer. And this linking obviously helps create a better public image or positive image. Publicity. So, publicity is the, let me go to market reach first of all, before I come back to publicity. Market reach is connected to your target market. So if you're trying to reach young people, Tiger Beer should promote an event for rock music fans. If you're trying to reach maybe an affluent, richer group of people, you might sponsor a golf event. something where you think that people are going to be interested in the product. So there's an element of targeting your market. That's the reach of the market. For example, the company will choose what to sponsor based on the demographics of the people involved. For example, a baby products company will sponsor a baby exposition. That's like a bunch of sellers or companies come together to try to wholesale to retailers. A baby expo or a parenting workshop. A company selling healthy breakfast cereal or sports shoes. We can think about, or Milo, for example. Milo is a common idea. Will sponsor a sporting event or a children's sports league. Sponsorship is more effective if the company and what it's sponsoring have the same target market. So there's so far visibility means how many people can see it. Positioning means what are the values that are transferring from the event to the company, and market reach has to do with finding the target market that you're trying to reach. And then we have publicity. So let me put the screen up. Okay, so we all know advertising is the most basic promotional tool that is used by companies to inform consumers about what products are available and what promotions might be happening at that time, and to reach them with that message in ways that the target market is interested in seeing, and to make a creative approach towards them. But we also know that advertising in general, I think most of us consider it to be a paid for. It's something that's paid for. And there's a term in advertising that you might hear in the video that I post today. It's called below the line. There's something that's called below the line and above the line. Above the line is something that's paid for. So if you buy an advertisement, you pay a fixed fee for the advertisement in the magazine, and then they publish it for 1, 2, 3 months. That's above the line. You put that in your budget when you make your advertising and marketing plan. And then there's something called below the line. And below the line are the things that you do in order to inspire other people to talk about your company without actually paying them directly. And that's publicity or PR. So those are different things, right? That's below the line. Above the line is something you pay for, and below the line is something that you get for basically free. An example of publicity that you can get for free is to make an announcement of a concert, maybe. And so in place of advertising, you give the newspaper access to interview the artist. So the newspaper is very happy to print an article that has a full interview with the artist, and they don't charge you for that, but you gave them access to the artist. If you have a grand opening for your business, for example, you probably come up with some marketing materials that you send to the media, for example, to help to hopefully get them to make some announcement about your opening of your shop. You could invite a reviewer to your restaurant to review your restaurant. Yes, it does cost you a free meal, but that's not really an advertising expense because you don't really know and you cannot really control what the reviewer writes about your restaurant. So in this case, publicity does have some element of loss of control. So that's what you pay for when you pay for advertising. You pay for that control. Okay, so let's look at the book real quick. Publicity during the promotion and running of an event. The corporate sponsor, so this is for sponsorship. This is sponsorship publicity. The corporate sponsors are mentioned and thanked. That's free, right? You maybe you paid for that or maybe you didn't. But I remember at the end of the, I think it was 2018 Australian Open, they invited the sponsor, the head of Kia Motors, to come out and have a word right before they delivered the trophy to, I don't know, probably Djokovic. And the guy talked for 15 minutes. I don't think they knew that he was going to talk so long. He was terrible. His English was, broken English. Everybody had just watched 3 hours, 4 hours of spectacular tennis, and they all wanted to see the champion. And this guy just went on and on and on for minutes and minutes and minutes, and took advantage of the publicity that he was given, or promised, I guess, from the event. When the event, company representatives may be involved in the ceremonies. That's an example of that. The sponsorship and event are aligned, so to mention of the event, the Tiger Unite concert, the name could be stuck into the name of the event. Every time that the newspaper talks about the event, every time that there is any other connection to the event through the media that's not advertising, that gives you an extra benefit. So the mention of the event in the media will usually include a mention of some of the sponsors, and the title of the event is Tiger Unite 2008, may include the name of the company. This is all free, basically advertising, adding to the brand awareness and creating an image. So that's very helpful, but again, you have some elements that are out of your control. So I'm going to post this article onto our classroom, but I want to make the comparison for a minute here between marketing and public relations. Will I get better at this? Let's see. Okay, so here, so marketing, in this case, we're calling it advertising. Marketing promotes the transfer of goods and services from the producer and provider to the consumer directly. Public relations is more generally focused, not necessarily on direct sales, but a good feeling that the customer has with the company, that there's a relationship, trying to establish a relationship. Marketing's immediate goal is sales, typically. Public relations' immediate goal is the positioning of the organization in the public mind. What's the position? Oh, we care. We sponsor sporting events. We sponsor health. We sponsor international music and good relations between. We're an international brand, right? If you bring a band from another country, that promotes the idea that you're more than a Vietnamese brand. You're going to extend your company is global. Marketing is usually very clear that their goal is profits, right? You see an advertisement, you're not suspicious, right? You're not suspicious of the advertisement. You know that it's paid for, and you know what the motivation of the company has in order to advertise to you. Public relations is a little bit less clear. You're not exactly sure if the information is coming from the company or maybe the writer in the newspaper who's writing about the event, or maybe we trust it more because it's not paid for. If there's a review of a movie or a restaurant, we kind of assume that it's not paid for, which may or may not be true. But if it's not paid for, then we feel like, okay, this is an honest review. This is not a direct selling situation. So marketing and advertising is direct selling, and we understand the message comes from the company, whereas public relations, we feel oftentimes that the message is coming from other sources, whether it's the newspaper or whatever. Generally speaking, advertising is measured through the number of sales that it generates, and public relations is measured by more, let's say, gray and harder to measure things like positive or negative image of the company, good feeling. They do this with, you can do it, you know, they do it with voting and presidents too, right? So it's like, okay, how many votes did they get? And this one would be, you know, how much support, what percentage says that this person is doing a good job, what percentage says they're doing a bad job. This article is quite good. It talks about advertising is buying time on a media, okay, some kind of media. It's using media. And there are some middle areas here, like I said, this will be on Classroom, called advertorials. So my business before was to be, I was in the publishing business, and I used to have a lot of companies come to me and ask me to write and not take an advertisement, but to pay me to put an article into the magazine that was positive about the company. Sometimes they would pay for the advertisement and then kind of wink, wink, but you should really write at least 1 or 2 articles about our company. The reason is, again, if you're a publication or you're, you know, a service that's trusted by the readers, right? Then it should look like more honest to the reader. If you're a media, though, you have to be careful, right? Because if you print too many articles that look like advertisements or feel like they're pushing some kind of company's products, like an iPhone review that's super positive, then the readers of your magazine might not trust you as much. They might start to become suspicious that you're not honest anymore. So there's a balance between the media and public relations, you know. So if it goes too far, it just looks like one big advertisement. So technically, in this sense, publicity is presented by the media because it's something that should be seen or known. A new movie review, a new restaurant, something that's going to make the news. And so the publicity seekers' intent to gain free and hopefully favorable attention. So that's the one thing, right? That's the one big difference for the company, is that you have control over the advertising message, but publicity, PR, you don't have total control. You can influence maybe, but you don't have total control whether it's going to be, it could be negative as well. So that's the difference between advertisement and public relations. That's what that's about. Advertising versus public relations. So to go to car companies, such as our task, we can imagine that car companies would want to promote some elements of their vehicles. Somehow, I read about Tesla sometimes, but I've never seen an advertisement for a Tesla. Some cars advertise themselves as getting better gas efficiency, more kilometers to the liter, for example. And there's consumer reports. I think that's another thing that's you put into this. So consumer reports is great, right? It's if you're, for a consumer to be able to compare which places are the best places to buy things and which products have features that are, or whatever, are better modern, like which phone is the best phone for a certain kind of user, is very, very helpful. And of course, the companies, they really, really want to have good consumer reports. And it goes for everything, including, so here, this agency here, Consumer Reports, they test products in the laboratory to find out if it's true, what's claimed for the products. Corona. Which food safety, it's a very useful report. Reports. Issues that matter: food safety, data safety, efficiency. Probably I would expect that they would have environmental friendly issues in there as well. Any event, I'm at the bottom of page 31. The impact of it, so car companies who use less gas are supposed to be more efficient and better for the environment than bigger cars that use much more gas. Okay, so that would be one example of an environmental issue that would affect public image. When a customer uses a business that shares the same values, hopefully they will become a loyal customer and will return. If a customer finds out that a business causes pollution, or pollutes a river, like Vedan, or uses packaging that's not sustainable, they will be less likely to return to the business. I think people are waking up now to these environmental issues more, but obviously we have a long way to go. I was in Thailand a couple times the last few months, and they have completely really stopped giving plastic bags to customers. I was happy about that. Sometimes I had to carry like 10 items in my hands, and I got used to it, and I got my own bag, and then I felt better about the whole situation. Which is not to say that they're great on packaging, right? There's still a lot of packaging issues. Businesses should be environmentally responsible to build a positive public image, to reduce waste and cost, and to minimize harm to the environment. The business benefits, so it's supposed to be something where the business wins and we all, society wins. This is about society as a stakeholder. Stakeholder is a word from our first week, if you can remember what it means. Review it if you cannot. I'm on page 32. Page 32. A business could offer environmentally sustainable services such as carbon offsets, recycling, or renewable energy options. When faced with the choice between an environmentally sustainable business and one that is not, many consumers will choose the green business. So what you would find and what you would call that would be a competitive advantage. We're going to talk about that in detail in marketing. Competitive advantage is something that when you're compared to your competitor, your customer sees you as better. Okay, so you can have a better price. That would be a competitive advantage. In this case, they would look at your product as better, and that would be your competitive advantage. Environmental issues are now quite important to Australian consumers. Businesses can build a positive public image if they promote what they're doing to be more green. So one of the questions that we had was about greenwashing. So green means environmentally friendly. The term greenwashing comes from the term brainwashing. And if you get brainwashed, that means that you're made to believe something that's not true. So the term greenwashing is an environmental claim that you're made to believe, but it's not true. So it's in the same family of words. Okay, so businesses can build a positive public image if they promote what they're doing to be more green. Some environmental issues that people are concerned about right now is obviously pollution, overuse of plastic. Greenwashing is on the list. Climate change, which is a bigger problem. It's very hard to associate climate change with one product in particular, outside of petrol, petrol and other fossil fuels, that is. Animal testing has become an issue. Testing products on animals has become a concern for many consumers. And plastic is probably going to be number one because it's in our oceans and it's very hard to break down in nature. It doesn't decompose. All right, we'll look at some of these issues for a few minutes each. I don't think, I'll try to highlight a few things. Climate change is occurring because the pollution caused by human civilization, which this declares as true, and I feel is true, but some people still feel is up for debate. There's no doubt, though, that the amount of CO2 in the air has increased, whatever the effects are. And that's leading to the greenhouse effect, which is, as you know, causes the Earth to get warmer, and then has a bunch of other secondary effects which are going to change the environment in which we live in very dramatically, unless we find some way to, some other power sources for our civilization. That's a game, right? Civilization. So, what is the effects? Some of these effects. Climate change contributes to longer and more severe droughts. We've seen droughts in many parts of the world, and they're also leading to fires, huge forest fires, storms, hurricanes have increased, the number of hurricanes and the strength of the hurricanes, and of course, ice loss. Companies are obviously a little bit, they may be concerned about climate change, but it's a very difficult subject to meet head on directly and to claim that you're actually doing something about. I've seen very few advertisements that directly address the issues of climate change. World Wildlife Foundation. They're obviously an advocate for animals and wildlife. So this is not a product ad, this is an ad that's telling us to be aware of the problem. This one's kind of brutal. This is incredibly, look at how crazy this one is. So this is an issue advertising. This is promoted by a group that's, let's see, this is concept. I don't know if there's a company here associated with this. This is just an issue advertisement. It's quite powerful though. It's quite powerful. That's a powerful image, right? The ice is melting and what's going to happen to our children. It's intense. I don't know what's going on. Global climate change could boost iPhone sales. I don't know why. Why is it going to boost sales? Because we're going to be underwater? Think different? I don't know. Is that a real ad? A lot of action. We're a melting ice cream cone. There's a great image, right? The climate is a melting ice cream cone. That's a very powerful, and this is again, World Wildlife Fund, very powerful ads they have to get people to think about climate change. But as you can see, very few companies really want to get involved with climate change as an issue. Here, they're talking about, in our book, is a very strange relationship to climate change. One issue that might be able to be tied to climate change is energy use on the next page. They're saying that climate change impacts tourism. I'm sure if we're not here as a group, we won't be care how many tourists there are. But of course, some tourist attractions are going to be some of the things that are first to be destroyed. Anyway, I'm on page 30. I'm going to jump to page 33 because, like I said, climate change is an issue that's usually focused on by organizations, environmental organizations, and not usually used for advertising or publicity. Society is very aware of climate change and the dangers that it poses for the community. The public and consumers, they expect businesses to be aware and to be managing their contribution to climate change. A business that has strategies to minimize their carbon footprint will enhance their public image, you would think. As we saw though in the story of stuff, if you remember the video we saw, the story of stuff, most of the pollution doesn't come from the packaging, most of the pollution comes from the production process. So companies need to be more responsible in their production process. Can outside agencies like Consumer Reports and governments, can they evaluate for us the effectiveness of the policies of the companies and how much carbon they put into the air? Certainly. We depend on them. We depend on some kind of outside agency. But again, you get to different levels of companies like multinational companies, companies that produce in China and sell in Vietnam or the United States. And who knows? Who knows what the environmental effects of their production processes are. So it's difficult. It's a very difficult situation. But in general, I would get to pollution here in page 33. Pollution is the plastic bags. These are the things that we're very familiar with, that we can see, that we contribute to in our purchasing decisions. When we buy things, we're making decisions about pollution. We're making decisions about what we expect companies to do in the future. If we buy single serving little milk boxes of Milo, if we buy everything in small packages and containers, then we basically tell companies that that's fine, keep making these small containers. If we buy larger quantities of things, we're sending a message to companies that we don't want to, we don't want to have so much packaging involved. So, pollution control is about cleaning up contaminants that have been created and released into the environment from products. In our case, pollution control is an environmental management process that manages what happens to the pollutants that your business generates. For example, rather than dumping waste overflows from a production, again there's production, into a local river, they need to come up with a strategy to control and dispose of their waste appropriately. The best would be recycling. So we should look at, companies will emphasize that their packaging is recyclable, which would be good. You can see that at the bottom of the cups or the bottles, plastic bottles, if it's recyclable. Most bottles are, that we find in the international companies, probably. But if you buy some cheap water somewhere, maybe it doesn't happen. The major problem with pollution control is that it's a reactive solution and only acts to deal with problems that have already been created. A far more effective option is to adopt pollution prevention strategies in your production process and limit the amount of pollution that your business generates and releases into the environment. So again, public image connects because we mostly find out about pollution when it's too late, right? It's always like, the company must have done something very wrong. And then it became news. And then once it was in the news, people found out about it, and then they fought back and didn't buy the products anymore and penalized the company. And then the company reacted and tried to change and save their public image. So the idea is that we should get companies to care about their public image about pollution before they make a mistake. It's difficult. Energy use, we can see energy use promoted on everyday objects like air conditioner. Obviously, the more efficient the air conditioning is, the better for the planet, the environment, how much energy is used is saving us from fossil fuels. So companies can improve their energy usage by recycling, using equipment that's more efficient. We've all been on the road and seen the Setai, some truck that's extremely old and inefficient and blows a lot of pollution into the traffic jam when they're stuck in traffic, and basically makes not only the environment worse, but it's bad for our personal health if we're near those vehicles. So there's many different ways that companies can use energy more efficiently, and sometimes they try to promote themselves through the use of, or through the, about the activities that they're taking. Animal testing, it's a big deal for, it usually happens in two, you could put animal testing as a public image issue into two forms. Obviously, it's very debatable, or not very debatable, that animals have feelings. It's debatable how much pain or whatever is being put on the animal. But there are two main ways that people or companies have used animals in testing. One is for products that are like medical products that are somewhat essential. And then there are products that are inessential, or luxury products like cosmetics and soaps. And this is obviously, the animals, I mean, from my perspective, the animals don't really need to be used for things that are not essential. to be tested on. There should be another way to test cosmetics than to use animals. Now, of course, the company will, excuse me, now, of course, the companies will, if there's a controversy, they'll emphasize that they don't do any animal testing of those products. Fairly straightforward. Public image can be enhanced if they promote their decision to sell products that do not involve animal testing. Greenwashing, I mentioned it before. Greenwashing is like brainwashing, or based on whitewashing. Consumers can be seen through gimmicks and what is called greenwashing. This term is based on whitewashing, and I would say brainwashing, where the imperfections of a wall in a building can be covered up by a layer of paint. Businesses have been found by using claims about being green or trying to build a positive public image without really doing the work or being committed to sustainability. This is the first time that we're mentioning this term in the book. It's the ACCC. That's the Australian Consumer and Competition, ACCC, the Australian Commission on Consumers and Competition, the ACCC. They're supposed to protect consumers and also regulate business competition. We'll go into the ACCC later, but if you're wondering why your book mentions it, that's why. So those would be the governmental people who are responsible for false advertising, for example. And so they're also in charge of greenwashing. That would be bad for our public image of a company. Volkswagen, VW, famous company, German company. We usually trust them as being regulated very well, right? We think about, part of the difference between which countries we trust and which countries we don't trust is the laws that regulate that country. We don't feel like the Chinese regulations are strong enough. So we kind of worry whether or not that they're following safety procedures. In Germany, we think, oh, okay, the laws in the European Union are quite strong and the penalties are quite strong. So we would expect that a German company would not create a huge scandal by lying about their how environmentally friendly their cars are. But that's what happened. So here's the VW scandal. There's a big scandal. The Volkswagen emissions scandal, also called Emissionsgate or Dieselgate, began in 2015, where they noticed that there was a violation of the Clean Air Act. Cars were only allowed to have so much emissions, and when the German car maker tested their products, they were able to change how much smoke came. They put something on the car to limit how much smoke came out of it, and so they got the stamp of approval, and it turns out later that they really did it, and that they actually made a lot more pollution. The cars made a lot more pollution than they said, and of course it was a huge scandal, for Germany, for the whole country, right? So if you have a country like Germany who has a strong public image for safety of their products, and then one of their biggest companies basically breaks the rules or lies about it, then the whole country's image is affected. And I would say with Boeing Airlines, that is very true, right? That is a scandal that goes right to the image of American production. If we can't trust an American company to make an airplane safe, then how is the government regulating food, drugs, everything else that's produced in the United States? So it really, really negatively affects the public image. So I'm pretty much finished with this chapter. We're having to move to marketing very soon because we're late to start with marketing. On the classroom, I put up another assignment Monday. You've got to have those 3 ideas to me so I can approve one of them by Monday for each of your groups. Please, 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 at the end of your submission of your ideas, your business ideas, put your actual names, your real names underneath it of you and your partner. I really, really need to see your actual names and coordinate them with the roll sheet on this one. I've got to get this back to you very quickly, right? So by Monday, I should get your ideas, be able to give you feedback. By Thursday of next week, I've got to approve and agree to your ideas and give you a little bit of advice on how to start your research. Because by next week, we've got to start market research. It's very important to get this started. It's a 5 or 6 week long project, so hopefully after next week, we'll be back in school and we'll be able to get into it. But if not, then somehow we're going to be doing a marketing plan through this computer system, you know, for the next 5 weeks, and it'll be a nightmare. But at least we're not going to miss any more tests at that time. So that's the one good thing. So I will be on. I think it's, yeah, I'll be on the Zoom is hard. I'm having trouble with the Zoom. Maybe I'll get better today. I'll try to find out a better solution. But I'll be on the Zoom around 2:15 today for 40 minutes. And if you have any questions about today's topic or the task, we can talk about it. Okay?